Hey friends, Al Iverson here. It's time for episode 60 of your email authentication and deliverability questions answered. Today, the question I want to tackle is this: how exactly does BIMI help email marketers? Now, if you're not familiar, BIMI stands for Brand Indicators for Message Identification. It's a standard that lets your brand's verified logo appear right next to your authenticated emails. Think of it as a visual trust badge in the inbox. When recipients see your logo, they immediately know your message is legitimate, which can and does help improve both trust and engagement. Now, BIMI doesn't do that on its own. You need to ensure that all the mail you're sending is authenticated with Sender Policy Framework or SPF and domain keys identified mail or DKIM authentication so that you can implement DMARC at a level of enforcement, meaning DMARC with a policy that tells mailbox providers to quarantine or reject mail purporting to be from your domain when it fails authentication checks. And then you add your verified mark certificate or VMC on top of that, giving you a blue verified checkmark in Gmail inboxes. And all of this combines to give you an inbox advantage that not all email senders have. Now, in a recent webinar, we walked through all of this, how retailers are using DMARC and BIMI together to protect their brands and improve their email results. Today, I've got a highlight for you from that webinar where my colleague, Scott Ziegler, VP of Product here at Valamail, shares some real world data from Valamail customers who've implemented BIMI and seen those measurable gains in engagement. So, Scott, why don't we talk about that lift that we think that our data shows that you get from a BIMI logo?
Yeah, so I mentioned this at the start, and this is news we haven't been able to share externally, so you're going to hear it for the first time. But BIMI is something I personally I love it, I believe in it. But as I talk to marketers, I always get questions of, well, are you really sure about that? Is BIMI going to work? Is it going to give me a lift? Is it going to actually kind of hold through and help me on this? So Al, if we go to the next slide, I wanted to kind of talk through these questions, but what we did here at Valamel is we've gone with a few different companies and we have I'll call it sponsored them to get a BIMI cert, and this is working with DigiCert to go through the process and to get a VMC and help our customers through this. But we wanted to make sure that we were putting our claims of how valuable this is. We wanted to validate it. So in exchange for us helping them through that process and giving them some incentives to get into BIMI, they have allowed me to share their stories. Now, I want to be clear, I can't share all these stories. When you talk to folks about BIMI, they usually are pretty guarded because it's going to talk about their exact email program, their email program performance. And if they are seeing lifts, they may not want all of their friends or competitors to know about those sorts of lifts. So what we're going to have today is fairly anonymized, but I'm going to talk through three different situations here. So let's actually talk about the story one. Does BIMI actually move the needle? So we were working with a brand that wanted to roll out BIMI. And so they put this out actually in March of this year, and they put it out halfway through March, and they saw an immediate lift. So even in that partial month, not having this fully there, but even in that partial month, they saw a 4.5 percentage point lift year over year. But we wanted to measure that first full month. So we had, we looked at April. And by the way, we're comparing, they gave us access to see their open rates before for last year, and then their open rates now for this year. Same campaign, same sort of thing that they're sending, giving us as close to apples comparison as we could get for month, for seasonality, for all of those things, and looking at this lift. When we looked at April, their open rates jumped from 53% last year's April to 63% this year's April. So this is one where it is an immediate impact. Having a trust mark, having a trusted email in a consumer brand, this had a huge impact for them. I should also note, this is not only looking at those consumer inboxes, this is looking at their email program overall. So as we talk about, Microsoft not having that lift, or maybe some other edge cases where they might be sending email out, that's in this. So it wasn't even just the BIMI emails. This is their entire email program for that campaign, for that domain. 10 percentage point lift. And I say this because I'm looking at the attendees here. Y'all might be marketers. We a lot of times work with the IT team as we're helping to work through this. You get to an enforcement and you set this up. And they saw this was the IT team we're chatting with. They said, "Is that good? Is 10% good?" And I tried to take a step back, and I realized that's just not the sorts of things that they even thought to share with their marketing team. And I said, I know some marketers who might give their left arm for that sort of a lift. This is a big deal. And so glad to be able to tell that one. So did it move the needle? That's great. You got that bump. Does that bump stay? And so, second story here that we're going to talk through is we actually took a domain and looked at this across 6 months. And so he said, great. So let's look at a 6 month period. So it's not just something new, something novel. Let's look across a 6 month period. Did this help? In this case, it was 5 percentage points average lift across that 6 month period. So it continued to stay there. It helped, but it stayed. And so my takeaway here is that this lift does hold. And again, we're talking about trust. We're talking about how you're showing your brand, how you're connecting with your consumers, how you're reaching out in the same sorts of ways, but we're adding that logo in. And in this case, all three of these we're talking about were VMCs that are showing a trust mark within the data and within the email experience. So great. I can get a huge bump. I can get a lasting bump. But the last piece that I talk with marketers about, and I think this one comes into play here for us heading into Black Friday, is yeah, and I might want to bump up my list a little bit, whether I'm going to send to more people or whether I'm going to send more mail to the same people. And I've heard that rumor, just send more, just send more. That's going to help, right? And you're going to be in this world where you're sending a lot more mail, whether it's to new folks or if it's to your same folks that's sending more messages. So we wanted to look at that case, which was higher volume. Now, this is one where it was not something we were checking of which piece of higher volume. We didn't get that far into their ESP data to see exactly how they were doing this, but we could tell their send volume was increasing. So we looked across monthly sending and specifically targeted places they wanted to ramp up the sending volume. So 2 to 3x sending volume increase, but they still saw year over year, no BIMI to BIMI, an increase in open rates. At the low end, it was a 2 percentage point increase. At the high end, it was a 9 percentage point increase. So even though they're sending more mail, and is the more mail you send, there's a risk that you could have your engagement dwindle a bit, or maybe you try to dust off that old list a little bit and reach out to folks that weren't as engaged. In this case, they were able to safely expand their email volume, send more mail, and see the open rates continue to increase. So my takeaway on this is trust lets you scale safely. And I realize there's going to be some nuance to all of this, and I apologize, I can't go into the exact details. That was part of our agreement on the keeping this anonymous, but we are very excited about being able to share some of these data points and put this in perspective. And we would encourage anybody who wants to learn more about BIMI to chat with us and see how we can help. So Al, if we go to the last slide here, I think my takeaway on this is when your brand's visibly trusted in the inbox, everything goes just a little bit better. Retail's in a great spot. Retail has DMARC at a high adoption rate. Retail actually has DMARC enforcement at a high adoption rate. That means that you're ready for this next step. It's right there. And it is easier now than ever with how Valamail and Digicert are here to help guide you through this process. And hopefully some of this data that we've just been able to show to you helps bring in the exact value that you're going to see. And what I will also, just a little plug here, is if you are on the security side or the IT side, yeah, this is helpful too. It's a trust mark. It shows you that the mail is authenticating. But please reach out to your marketing friends and see if they'd be interested in a few percentage point lifts or even a quick bump as they're heading into Black Friday or Cyber Monday. Because right now, everybody's going to be shouting at consumers, and you want your message to stand out. And BIMI is just one of those ways you can do that.
And thanks for watching this episode of Ask Al. If you have any questions or feedback, please don't hesitate to drop me an email at al.iverson@valamail.com. I'd love hearing from fellow email geeks. And don't forget to visit our website at valamail.com when you're ready to embark upon your DMARC or BIMI journey.